I'll do a little introduction first. Look, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this expo. It was only 2 months ago where a young fellow by the name of Troy approached me and said, how about we do an expo? And he'd be about number 1002. Usually I tell the people what they have to do to organise an expo, and they disappear with their head bowed and don't bother. But Troy, being the trooper he was, he disappeared and he came back with all the requirements that I said we're going to need. And I thought, well, gee, you've done your half, now I'll do my half. My side was to organise the paperwork and the official side of it, and also let all the people in my industry know that it was going to happen. And believe it or not, within 2 months, here we are. A lot of people were doubtful. It is the first Gold Coast Reptile Expo. But without all these guys, the exhibitors, the stall holders coming here and putting in the unbelievably phenomenal effort that they have, not just effort, the expense. If you guys knew what some of these pet shops have gone to make this happen, it's just all good. Now, all it is a taste of what is to come in the future. You can see the size of this already. We get 220 people an hour through the door. So imagine next year, we can times it by 4. Now the purposes for this expo is not just for a whole heap of reptile freaks to rub shoulders and swap ideas and have a look at new products. It's to teach people that are considering getting into the game what you should and shouldn't do. It's also for you guys to meet new food suppliers, see the new products, find out what vets are available. Any of the facets associated with reptile keeping, it's here. So I hope you're all enjoying it. There have been expos in the past, but they've been down south and up north, a little bit far to drive. So I'm glad this has finally happened. Alright, without any further ado, what I've done is my name's Tony and I've been a snake catcher for 16 years. And in that 16 years, I hear so many old wives' tales, so many myths, so many fallacies from people that it really blows me away at some of the stories. I often wonder where these stories have been derived from. So, for 2 months of the year, I'm fairly quiet. And I used to sit around scratching my head thinking, well, what am I going to do? And that's where I thought, well, all these fallacies and myths and whatnot that I hear, why not get together, put together a bit of a show to educate the public. If I can teach one person one thing to save either their backside or a snake's backside, well then I've done my job. You see, snakes have an undeserved reputation. They don't have arms or legs. They don't have ears. They're a very strange animal. They can go a long time without food. And they can eat 3 times their girth. So because they are so unusual, people make up all these stories about them. They also have this special, some snakes have this special protein in their saliva designed to paralyse or break down their prey. And unfortunately, us humans, we can't help ourselves going and putting our 2 cents worth in when we come across a wild animal. Whether it be a bird, a mammal or a reptile. Whenever we see them, we go and poke it with a stick or put our face in their face. All wildlife feels threatened by us humans. They feel as though we're out to eat them when we approach them and antagonise them. So they have to defend themselves in whichever means possible. And unfortunately, snakes can't growl, bark or jump up and down. All they can do is give you a quick nip. And those snakes that have that protein in their saliva called venom, sometimes when they bite people to defend themselves, people suffer from that. There's so many stories about how many people do suffer from it, you'd be surprised. About 3 people a year die from snake bite. But guess what? 20 people a year die from horse-related accidents. That's more than sharks, snakes and crocs put together. And yet, adults will put their hands in their pocket to pull 2 or 3 grand or more out to buy a horse for their daughter. Go figure. So what I'm going to do for you guys today is a little bit of an educational thing, using a handful of very venomous snakes, so that you can hopefully learn a few things, what to do, what not to do, should you, or when you come across one. These snakes aren't necessarily from the Gold Coast, they're Australia-wide. And the first little guy I've got here is a Stevens Bandit. Now, I use the word little for a reason. They grow a little bit bigger than this. Sorry, champion, not hanging on properly there. Now, the reasons why I said little is what quite often, and it's probably the most common fallacy I hear, when I go to remove a snake from somebody's house, they go, oh, mate, it's just a little thing. What's there to worry about? It seems that the public have it in their mind that if a snake is small, the venom is less. Whether it be a 7-inch Eastern Brown or a 7-foot Eastern Brown, its venom is exactly the same strength. Obviously its fangs are a lot shorter, but still, the venom can do the damage that it has to do. Now I don't ever like to use the word aggressive. A lot of people say, whoa, that's an aggressive little bugger, isn't it? To me, aggression is when 2 blokes are at the pub, they look across the room and say, let's go start a fight with that human over there. That's aggression. These guys never go and stir trouble for the heck of it. It's purely defence. Obviously some snakes are a lot more defensive than other snakes, and depending upon what's going on with those snakes as to how defensive they will be. Another thing I can bring up with this little Stevens Bandit is have a look at the colours on him. He's quite a pretty little snake, isn't he? Now, quite often I hear from people that if a snake has got patterns on it, that it's harmless. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, this particular breed is famous for crossing the road, and old Mr. Magoo sees this crossing the road and thinks little Johnny would love one of these, little carpet python. They grab it and they end up in trouble. They end up in hospital pretty quick. Now, I've been snake catching for 16 years, and in that 16 years, I've done nearly 10,000 snake calls. In that 10,000 snake calls, I've come across 7 of these on the job. So they're not a very common snake, not around here down on near the coast. If by chance you live around Binnaburra and Lamington National Park, Beachmont, where it's very, very rainforesty, hilly and a bit cooler, you'll get these guys fairly regularly up there. So they're not a very common snake at all. Although it looks pretty, if you got bitten by one of these guys and ignored it, you'd end up in a little bit of trouble. But anyway, without any further ado, I'll stick this cheeky fellow away. And I'll bring out the next snake. And the next snake is probably one of my most favourite breeds of snake as far as looks are concerned, and also their nature. Remember I said some snakes are defensive and some snakes are not so defensive? These guys are the lovers of the snake world, not the fighters. They've got a very, very bad reputation. I hear all the farmers talk about the old Joe Blake. The red-bellied black snake. You find these guys all the way up and down the east coast of Australia, usually very commonly around where there's waterways, because these guys don't mind frogs. They'll also eat mice and rats, but their favourite food is frogs. Us humans did a wonderful thing a couple of years ago, trying to save our cane fields and introduce the cane toad. Now that cane toad has got a very, very toxic venom in the back of its head, and that venom has been doing irreparable damage to a lot of wildlife out there, including snakes. Now any animal that usually eats frogs, which is a part of the ecological system, comes across the cane toad thinking that it is a frog, and then they eat it and they die very quickly. So unfortunately there are a number of breeds of snakes that haven't been able to come back from the cane toad, but this red-bellied black snake, when I first started snake catching years ago, I used to come across a handful of them every now and then per year. Now I get a lot of them every week. Not only do I get a lot more of them, but I'm getting bigger and fatter and chunkier and healthier red-bellied blacks. And what that is they're basically very slowly evolving to leave the cane toad alone. Now the red-bellied black snake, they're good in a way, they're cannibalistic. So if you've got a red-bellied black snake in your backyard, there's chances are that you don't have any other critters like eastern browns and stuff like that. Now here in Australia we have 23 of the 25 most venomous snakes in the world. I can see some of you Kiwis packing up and going home already. But the good news is, they've got very short fangs, with the exception of 2. We'll get to that later on. So if by chance you're dancing around out in the public, in the bush, or doing some gardening in your backyard, and you feel that you might go to an area where you come across snakes, just wear some decent jeans and some good footwear. So that way, if by chance you should come face to face with a snake where it has to defend itself, chances are its fangs probably won't make it through your clothing. Now, all breeds of snake vary a lot in colour. Some of them more than others, and some of them less than others. The red-bellied black is probably the one that varies the least. But yeah, they're black, and they've got a red belly. But that red belly can be very, very vibrant red. It can be bright orange. It can have very little red whatsoever. They also sometimes can have a brown head. Also, us humans, we constantly exfoliate. We're constantly losing the top layer of our skin. Little particles are coming off all the time. So if by chance a snake scratches itself or is growing too big, it can't exfoliate its skin the same way we do. So what they do is they actually change the whole skin altogether. They shed their skin. So in order to separate the old skin from the new skin, they secrete a chemical between the old skin and the new skin. And that chemical is a milky white colour. So as you can imagine, the colour black mixed in with that milky white colour makes them look grey. So quite often I get people ring me saying, mate, I've got a great snake with a white belly. I straight away know that it's more than likely a red-bellied black that's halfway through shedding its skin. But I've also got to keep an open mind. Over the years, I've been caught to red-bellied black snakes with a blob of mud on their head, eastern browns that have swum through paint, all sorts of things. And when people describe the snake to you, you think, oh, I've got to see this. All sorts of unusual things can happen. I've learned to expect the unexpected. Alright, I'll put Rocky away. Red-bellied black snakes are extremely placid. They're very, very unlikely to carry on unless you go and stir them up. And here I am painting a beautiful picture about red-bellied black snakes. I've worked with snakes professionally for a while now, and I've played with them since I was a kid. A lot of people say to me, Tone, you ever been bitten? Yeah, a red-bellied black. They go, oh, good on you, you just finished painting this beautiful picture about how red-bellies are awesome. You see, when I go to catch a wild red-bellied black snake, I usually fairly quickly pick it up and drop it in a bag and be offered it so I can go and release him elsewhere. This particular day, about 20 years ago it was, I went to capture a snake, went to put it in the bag. That was down in Sydney where I lived, and this lady, she hadn't told me the good news. It was in her garage, it was on a cold concrete floor, it was easy to do, easy to catch, no worries at all. Then she turns around to me, and after I grabbed it, it turned around and bit me twice. I thought, oh, gee, what's your problem? That's where she said, well, just before you got here, I whacked it with a broom and poured boiling water on it. So obviously that snake was quite upset, and it vented its anger on me. It felt frightened for its, fearing for its life. So these days I always go there with a very open mind as to what could be going on. Now the next breed of snake I've got here is also a member of the black snake family. Now I'm pretty sure that when I get this guy out, you're all going to look at me and go, what was in your cornflakes this morning, snake man? Because there's nothing black about this snake. Good old King Brown. Now as a snake catcher, I regularly get people call me and say, mate, I've got a King Brown in my backyard. Well, having a brown coloured snake doesn't surprise me, because out of the 21 different breeds of snakes we get here in southeast Queensland, most of them will come in a shade of brown. So when people see a snake, firstly they get a fright from that, then they see it's brown and they straight away start thinking of all these horror stories they've heard at the pub. The fact of the matter is, most of them have nothing to worry about. Now, this particular bloke, the reasons why he's called a King Brown is because he's Australia's heaviest body venomous snake. He'll easily attain a length of 3 metres and as thick as my forearm. While I'm here, I can help dispel one of those myths. Have a look at the size of the head on this snake. How many of you guys have heard that if a snake has a small head, it must be venomous? The size of the head is associated more with the age of the snake. You see, snakes never stop growing. They get to a certain length pretty quickly and then they start to fill out. So this guy here is about 11 or 12 years old, something like that. He got to this length. He's still growing in length, but he's filling out, stocking up. Kind of like when you buy a staffy, it gets to its 2-year-old length and you thought, what if I bought a greyhound here? And all of a sudden it gets its chest and its head. But the same with snakes. So when people say, oh, it's got a small head, there are certain breeds of snakes that have smaller heads, and then it could also be a snake that's only very young. And remember I said that snakes vary a lot in colour? With this King Brown here, what is it, terracotta, browny red, they can be very, very dark. They can be the same colour as the carpet in my trailer. They can be grey, they can be all sorts of colours. Now the King Brown snake also has the highest venom yield out of any snake in Australia. You see, if we get a coastal taipan and we milk that coastal taipan, you get about 0.2 of a milligram of venom out of that milking. You go and milk one of these guys, it's not uncommon for the guys at the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories to get 1,350 milligrams of venom. So that's quite a substantial increase. You might think, well, that's a lot of venom going through your body. It is. As far as the venom strength is concerned, it's not all that powerful. You got bitten by one and ignored it, you probably wouldn't be here tomorrow. But they have a muscle-destroying venom which is very painful. So if you get 1,350 milligrams of muscle-destroying venom in your finger, you're going to be saying ouch for sure. Now what I've done to give you an idea to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to show you the age thing and the head thing, also the colour, is I've got another King Brown here, which is only 3 years old. And he's from a different location, so you'll see that they can vary unbelievably in colour, and also that he's got a tiny head compared to the hoof head that I just had out then. The first bloke I got out is from the St George Basin, out west from here. You don't get King Browns on the Gold Coast, in case I didn't mention that. This particular bloke is from Alice Springs. Have a look at the colour variation. Also, have a look at the size of his head. Nothing compared to the last bloke, because he's only 3. Come see him again in 5 years' time, you can add a foot on there and he'll probably be double the girth. So that's how things work in the snake world. Alright, I'll stick this cheeky fellow away. The next breed of snake is a very, very pretty snake. Another one of my favourite snakes. You'll love them. This particular bloke here is called a Collette's black snake. You find them from out west. Usually about 2 hours west of Rockhampton is where they're commonly found. They're very closely related to the King Brown actually. They have a very similar venom, but nowhere near the venom yield. They grow pretty large as well. As you can see, this bloke here is 7'2".